Hello everyone. Well, it's the first day of December and the first day of meteorological winter, which runs from the start of December through the end of February. So it's time for an update on what we're expecting this season. And let's start by looking just at December and looking at the temperatures that we're expecting for December. And what we're seeing is a strong signal that especially for the first couple of weeks of December, it's going to be quite cold across really it looks like the northern 2/3 of the country. Lots of cold fronts coming through, keeping those temperatures colder than normal. But these look like fronts that once they hit the south are really going to fizzle. So that's why across much of the southern U.S. we're still expecting warmer than normal conditions for the month of December. And if you're looking at where temperatures are going to be the most below normal, that's looking like North Dakota, northern Minnesota, northern Montana. Meanwhile, it looks like temperatures are going to be the most above normal across southern Texas and southern Louisiana. And again, when you're looking at this map, I don't want you to think that it's going to be colder than normal every day in December or warmer than normal every day in December. The best way to think about this is if you're in northern Montana, North Dakota, northern Minnesota, you're probably going to be saying throughout the month of December, geez, it's been awfully cold lately. Meanwhile, if you're in southern Texas or southern Louisiana, you're probably going to be saying, geez, it's not feeling like December. It's been awfully warm. So that's the best way to think about this. Now let's look at precipitation. And keep in mind, this includes both rain and snow. So we're including both here in overall precipitation. And there are two areas in December that really stand out to us as being wetter than normal. One bullseye particularly focused in Northern California and Southern Oregon, but really in general kind of spreading across Idaho and on into Montana. And also a bullseye in Kentucky and Northern Tennessee, looking quite wet there. Multiple rounds of rain again and again, it looks like. Meanwhile, though, looking drier than normal across Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, northern Texas, New Mexico, and also drier than normal in central and southern Florida. So you might be wondering, well, what's going on there? Aren't we going to be seeing a lot of cold fronts? Yes, and that's why we're expecting those colder than normal temperatures, especially in Minnesota and North Dakota. But it looks like with a lot of these fronts that we're going to see in December, they're going to be dry cold fronts. So that cold air is going to be coming in, but already running into pretty dry, stable air. So a lot of cold fronts that won't be bringing rain or snow, it looks like, just more cold. And again, same story when we're looking at this map. This does not mean that it's going to be raining every day in the places that are expected to be wetter than normal, or that it's going to be dry every day in December in the places where it's going to be drier than normal. But again, think of it this way. If you're in Northern California, Southern Oregon, there's a good chance that you're going to be saying, geez, it's been awfully wet lately. And if you're in Eastern Iowa, Southern Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, you're probably going to be saying, geez, it's been a while since we've seen any rain. It's been awfully dry. So that's the best way to look at this precipitation situation. So now let's add 2 more months to this. Let's add in January and February. And we're going to go back to looking at temperatures. And the big change here is it looks like the cold air is going to be more limited farther to the north, and actually warm air is going to spread to more locations as we get into January and February. Particularly, it looks like across the northeast. Notice those shades of orange spreading there. Where we're expecting the most above normal temperatures, though, is across the southeast, looking like a very warm winter for our southeastern states. But yeah, looking pretty cold in those same places we were talking about in December. It looks like that trend is going to continue into January and February for Oregon, Montana, North Dakota, and particularly northern Minnesota. So now let's talk about precipitation. And the big change here is really in 2 areas, particularly the Great Lakes. Notice we weren't really seeing that in December, but particularly in January and February, looking like the moisture is really going to be building, looking quite wet in and around the Great Lakes. Notice how it continues in the northwest. But we also expect, we've kind of already talking about the drier than normal conditions across parts of the southeast and Florida, but we do expect the drier than normal conditions to spread farther to the west into places like Arizona and particularly Southern California as we get into January and February. And this general pattern with precipitation, really temperatures, very closely comes along with La Nina, which we expect those La Nina conditions to last throughout the winter months, and this is typically what we see. So I know, though, that there's one big question that you all have, and the biggest thing when it comes to winter is, what about snow? So when we're talking about snow, we have to talk about where the most below normal temperatures are going to be, and where the wettest conditions are going to be. So keeping that in mind, when you combine our precipitation map and our temperature map, you can come out with a snowfall outlook. So we're expecting the most below normal temperatures and the most above normal precipitation is in eastern Washington, northern Idaho, and western Montana. So you can say that that portion of the country has the highest chance of seeing snow. This is probably where we're going to see the most rounds of snow, especially up in the Rockies at high elevation. There's probably going to be a lot of snow this winter. Meanwhile, looking at the part of the country with the most above normal temperatures and the most below normal precipitation, that looks like southern Georgia and northern Florida. So, and generally, as you know, Florida doesn't see snow very often, but the chance of seeing snow this year looking even lower than normal. So another good way of looking at this is if you're a snow lover, the place to be is going to be in Washington, northern Idaho, and Montana. If you hate snow, the place to be, Florida, southern Georgia.